So Ben, thank you for being with us here today.
Pleasure.
For our audience, would you mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
So I'm Ben Kingston-Hughes, not Ben Kingsley, the famous actor who I often get introduced as, which is slightly unfortunate. So I'm an author. I'm also a managing director of a company called Inspired Children. We're a company working with vulnerable children across the whole UK. And because working with children doesn't make any money, as most people will know, I subsidise the children's sessions by delivering training. I write books and articles and just basically tout myself out to anybody that will have me.
How did you first develop your unique approach to working with children through play and joy, and how has that evolved over time?
That's a good question. I think it almost was a chicken and egg thing, in that I went into an environment where play was the most important thing. And because I saw the benefits of that and I saw children just becoming children again, it's kind of stuck with me. But at the time, I didn't know any of the science behind play. I didn't know the neuroscience and the evolutionary biology and all the stuff that I now have learned. All I saw was children having the best time ever. And then realizing how vulnerable those children were almost as an afterthought, if that makes sense. Okay, yeah. Seeing those children and actually working with the projects I work with, sometimes you wouldn't know those children are as vulnerable as they are, or that they've had such adverse childhood experiences, because once they're playing, it's like they become the children again. And that is our kind of unwritten strapline, is giving children back their childhood. It used to be putting the magic back into children's lives, but we kept getting mistaken for magicians, and people tried to book us to do children's parties.
Ben Kingsley, the magician.
Yeah. So we used to turn up with all this den making kit, and the parents of the children's party were going, hang on, are you not going to do magic? We're going, no, we're not magicians. And so, it's not an official strapline, but it's something we stick to. And in fact, there's a session going on today, which I'm unfortunately not able to go to, but my team are at. And all it's doing is working with newly adopted children to help them bond with their families. So there's no, it's not complex. It's really simple stuff. They'll be doing dens, they'll be doing magic potions, they might be climbing trees, they might be running around on scooter boards and building things out of cardboard boxes. But through that, not only do the children experience play, and that helps them to get that vital bit of childhood back, but the adopters who are joining in, they help bond more with their new families. So the mental health of everybody improves, and it's win-win. So that's the kind of thing we do.
That sounds amazing, by the way. I absolutely love that. So it's the unseen, isn't it? I guess when you're talking about vulnerabilities, they're not always that obvious to.
No, I think that's a real problem with society, is that there's an assumption about what vulnerability means, what it looks like. The posters of the quiet, withdrawn child who's kind of withdrawn into themselves so much because the rest of the world is so awful, and there is that element to my job. But actually, a significant number of vulnerable children, it doesn't manifest in being quiet.
No,
their behavior is the most negative behavior. And if you are an adult just seeing that behavior and then treating that behavior with aggression, matching their aggression, all you're doing is continuing the cycle.
Yeah.
And one of the things we try to get all of our staff to do, and we're trying to promote this on our behaviour training, is to see through the behaviour to the child underneath. And actually that behaviour is not personal, it's not aimed at me, it is just a symptom of the child's vulnerability and of what the rest of the world has done to them. So
we've spoken previously, and I like is that kind of that core messaging, negative reactions meeting negative behaviour, kind of almost affirms this belief that something is bad or wrong. Whereas actually kind of seeing underneath that, or seeing through it, and supporting and being curious, actually.
Yeah, but I think in terms of behaviour, we don't want to be enforcers, we want to be detectives.
Yeah.
We actually want to put our detective hat on and work out why are you doing that? And the most important question of all, what do you need? Right, what do you need from me right now? And a classic example of that is if a child is being aggressive towards you, and your natural reaction is to be aggressive back. But if you look at why, and if that child is being aggressive because they feel powerless, unimportant and angry, by you matching that with aggression, all you're doing is reinforcing every emotion that's led to that behaviour in the first place. And the cycle continues. And sometimes it's the member of staff who, we do get called every name under the sun. Yeah, we do get, some quite genuinely negative behaviour, but we don't ever match that with our negativity.
Yeah.
We just try to steer and guide the child towards positive behaviour. And there's no miracle cures for this. It's just patience and understanding and not being like all the other grown-ups in the child's life. Can I give you one example?
Of course, please do.
So we had this one young lad, and he called me the C word every other word. All right, so the really bad one. Yeah. Just to put it into context, so I work for Quorum Adoption, and they sent me an email last December to say the next event that we're doing is Winter Wonderland themed because we're not using the C word. And I don't know if it's my ADHD, but my brain didn't quite understand what they meant, and I'm thinking, what? Why would we even use the C word? That's awful. And it was only because my wife was in the office. She went, "It's Christmas." It's like, oh wow, that makes way more sense now. That now it suddenly makes sense. So this little boy wasn't calling me a Christmas, basically, is what I'm saying. And it just kept going at me. I didn't go back at him once, and I finally managed to get him to do a rope swing over a stream. So I got him to go on this stream, and he got stuck. Couldn't go forwards, couldn't go backwards. And at that point, he didn't call me a name at all. He called me my real name because he was stuck. He went, "Ben, will you help me?" And I'm uncomfortable with being called a hero, but if you feel the need to all the way through the interview, no, that's absolutely fine. But basically, I strode into the water, picked him up, muscles rippling, all right, sagging, and then I carried him out of the water, and he never called me the C word again. And it's not rocket science why, it's because in his life, he'd never had an adult who'd had his back.
Yeah.
And it didn't take anything because to me, it cost me nothing. I mean, the water was that deep. I will just say we don't endanger our children's lives. It was quite a safe environment. But he never called me a name again. And we worked with him for 6 weeks. And he was like a different child for the whole session. Can I just stress, don't engineer life-threatening situations just to improve your children's behaviour. That's not what I'm saying, okay?
I wasn't assuming that.
That could go badly wrong. I just don't want loads of nurseries to get into trouble because, oh, hang on, this works.
No. I mean, as long as it's adequately risk
well, yeah.
I think so. One of the things I love about the work that you do is that you fundamentally you champion joy as part of the child's developmental journey.
Yeah.
But yet this isn't always reflected in educational frameworks. No. So how do you encourage educators to integrate more joy into their teaching, even in more structured environments?
I think the only way that seems to work is proper research. It's not. We're no longer in the state where we think, oh, joy, it's this abstract concept that it's always be a bit nice. Like Ben's turned into an old hippie and telling everyone to hug a tree. And I realise there is that viewpoint. There is some really concrete research about joyful approaches to even to formal education. So there was a psychologist called Dr. Judy Willis, absolutely amazing psychologist, who promotes joyful approaches to education, not merely as a nice way to work with children, but a fundamental building block for all learning. And she's backed up every one of her assertions with about 6 different neuroscience studies. Oh, wow. So we're not talking about a grey area here.
Yeah.
And in fact, my wife is doing a master's in psychology at the moment, which is after 30 years of no education at all. She's just going into this. It's amazing. She's loving it, but it's killing her.
Yeah.
But what seems to be coming out is there's not any ambiguity anymore. It's not like there are different theories. It's that we actually know exactly what experiences children need to thrive and also to learn effectively. And none of those are sitting still listening to the grown-up speak. That is categorically one of the worst ways for learning. It will only engage 20 to 30% of a classroom. The rest of the children need something more. And we know this now. We've known this for a while. It's not like new research, some of it. So I think it's about, when I do teach training courses, for instance, it's about showing them that it's not just abstract, that there is actual concrete research to back up that joyful approaches to education will not just help the children that have disengaged to learn, but they'll also help the children that are already engaged to learn even better. So it's a universal approach. And I think, neuroscience, that's how we persuade everyone.
Yeah. Well, you can't argue with well-researched and well and supported scientific outcomes, can you?
I think there's a tendency in this country to dismiss mental health, to not think of it even as a real thing. I think people who work with children see mental health issues all the time, not just in their children, but in our staff teams as well. Whereas there are some people in society, people making decisions, for instance, who seem to just brush that under the carpet because it's not something you can see. It's not something you can, tick on a box. Whereas when you show actual changes to the brain, I think those people have to sit up and listen, because it is something you can actually see with imaging technology, or it's something you can detect in the biochemistry in the brain. So I think that's why it's so effective.
You started to go into this a little bit just now, but I'd like to just ask this question to expand on the piece. But so in your experience, how does focusing on creativity and play help to close the gap that children who may struggle in more traditional learning environments experience?
I think one of the best things we do is to remove the failure thresholds from children's lives.
Yeah.
And what that means is that everything, so much of a child's childhood is, you've got to do it like this. You've got to achieve this. You've got to get 10 out of 10 on your spelling test or this. And there are so many of these goals that children have to hold themselves up to that actually it detracts massively from their childhood, because they're constantly under these expectations. One of the first things we do is we don't set any rules. We don't play, like, for instance, a sport where you have to achieve a certain level. We do the silly stuff. You know, we run around being superheroes, and then it doesn't matter how fast or strong you really are. In real life, that's irrelevant, because you're using an imaginary world. And so the imagination creativity removes the failure thresholds. And so we use a lot of loose parts play, a lot of open-ended resources. And with that, you don't tell the children what to make. So whatever they make is theirs. It's unique, it's special. But because there was never a template or this is what it's supposed to look like in the first place, there's no failure. It's pure creativity. And I think that's our best way to get through to children is loose parts play, open-ended resources, and just that acknowledgement that the adults are not going to judge you, and that we're there to support you. And you know what? If you make a mess, brilliant. If you build something out of cardboard boxes and then you destroy it straight away, it's fine. Nobody cares. It's not about what you make. It's about the experience.
Incredible. I love that open-ended resources. When you were describing it, I was just thinking back to sort of pockets of memories of my own childhood where paint by numbers and you do design tech, and it was just very structured. It was insert piece here, do that, and everyone achieves the same. But then you look at the best person in the group, and you kind of measure your failure by how good theirs was.
And there's still the attitude of the good ones win stuff or get put on the wall or whatever. And a fraction of tiniest fraction of creativity is actually on paper, and yet that's the bit that everyone focuses on. My own son, he was amazing at art, and I even show his pictures as part. I'm doing a seminar later, and I actually got a picture he drew as a 8-year-old. Amazing picture. But he dropped art in high school because he was made to draw fruit, and not just one bottle of fruit, lots of fruit. I mean, how many teenagers do you know that love not even drawing it, eating fruit for a start? and it's that you've got to work with children's passions. I mean, the best example is, we used to have a lady that came into one of our settings that would make clay pots. She was a sculptor, so she was really good. She'd come in she was one of the parents, so it's a free resource. Modern slavery policy. The loophole is get parents in to do work for you. And so she would make clay pots for children. The thing is, your 4-year-olds can't make a clay pot as well as an artist. So they would go, can you make mine? And she ended up making 30 clay pots for children. There's nothing wrong with that. That's lovely. And she was a lovely lady. And that's, cultural capital, it's aspirational. But if that's the only experience of creativity a child has, that an adult has to finish it for them, that's killing creativity. So what we promote on our sessions is to just give the children the clay. And that's the whole approach. We don't tell them what to make. That's the key. We give them the clay and then watch them explore it. And if they make a clay pot, you can celebrate the clay pot. But if they make a squishy mess that looks like a willy, celebrate that. You might have to edit that bit out. But
might leave that in, thanks.
Well, fair enough. But it doesn't matter what they make. It's about the process and the experience. And if you think about it, I mean, we now know that brain growth is experiential, in that the experiences of childhood grow the brain more than any other factor, including genetics. So it's the experiences that count, not whether you've succeeded, not whether you've done it well according to an adult. It's that experience. And I think sometimes we need to scale it right back to, let's just have a brilliant time in this moment. Let's just be children.
It's almost like success is really getting to the end of the journey, not how you get there or what the end looks like. It's just or say the end of the journey, but the end of that experience.
I wrote an article recently, and I can't remember who did it, because my brain, I write so many of these articles, but they give you a letter of the alphabet, to write about. And a few years ago, I got P for play, which is brilliant. I'm a play specialist.
Yeah.
This time I got J for journey. And they said, do you want to write about the learning journey? I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So what I wrote about was the journey through childhood. And I wrote about what it's like to have a travelling companion on that journey. And that is your early years professional. And then think about your own journeys. Think about how much more rewarding and stimulating that long car journey is if you've got somebody to share it with.
Yeah.
And then how much, more boring and unstimulating it is when you haven't got that. So I wrote all about that. And it's all about journey, not destination. Journey before destination.
Yeah.
That's the important bit. That's a quote from a book, by the way. That's Brandon Sanderson book. I'm not stealing, not stealing that quote.
You've worked with a wide range of educational professionals.
Yeah.
So how do you tailor your training to, say, different audiences, and what common reactions or shifts have you observed in their approaches to play-based learning?
Okay, so that's an interesting one because I get asked to do a lot of work with lots of different ages of children, lots of different groups, and the people who are booking the training are very specific, saying, it has to be tailored to this group. And actually, the ethos underneath all of this works with a baby, it works with a 19-year-old. And we actually work with babies all the way up to 19-year-olds. And although the activities will change, of course they will, the actual ethos we apply is based on 3 simple concepts: play, nurturing, and curiosity.
Yeah.
Get those 3 things right with a baby, you've got a thriving baby whose brain is growing absolutely, at its most accelerated time. Get that right with a 19-year-old, you've got a 19-year-old who is less likely to exhibit negative behaviour and more likely to engage. So actually although we tailor the examples and we always use examples of the age group we're working with, or if we're working with a specific disability, the ethos stays the same. And so once you get that bit understood, what happens is the staff play more themselves. And I think that's the biggest change. It's yes, of course, that's had a knock-on effect on the children. But as soon as you've got playful staff in that mix, whether you're working in a youth centre and you've now suddenly decided that you're going to be running around or dancing around like that in front of the teenagers, or whether you work with babies and you're lying on the floor with the baby using you as a bouncy castle, I actually think the biggest change is that we adults play more. And then emailing afterwards to go, I feel so much better, I'm enjoying my job more, my own mental health has improved, because we now know all the benefits to children's mental health, if they play more, apply to adults.
So the joy is extended. It brings almost like a new meaning to, or at least a new descriptor for play-led learning.
Yeah. And the wonderful Greg Bottrell said something I think quite poignant recently. He said that if you want to be the best that you can for children, if you want to play, you have to make yourself a bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful idea that it's not just easy. It's not just instinctive. Once you get to be an adult, it's not always easy to suddenly do the make-believe play and pretend the puppet's got a voice or do the silly voices when you read a story. I think if you work with children, you have to go, do you know what? I don't feel 100% comfortable doing this, but I know how brilliant it's going to be for my children. And you've got to put yourself on the line and be vulnerable for your children, because then you'll see the benefit. And the more you do it, the more natural it will become. So you basically put a mask on, even though you're dying inside the first few times you do it, the more you do it, I think the more natural it becomes. And I think that is the best thing. So, yeah.
Ben, as someone who's advocated for play across different settings, from schools to local authorities, how do you think the importance of play will continue to be recognised in the future of early years education?
That's a good question. I think it's by everybody taking up the mantle of understanding that it's not just a bit good for children. I think we're all guilty of it, and there's all loads of posts on social media go, play is amazing for children. I think we're beyond that now. I think the research is so solid to show that it's not just like, let's eat a bit more broccoli good, or let's go a few more walks in the week good. We are talking the most profound and life-changing experiences for children. We're looking at play as a key criteria for brain growth. It's one of the most powerful brain growth tools you'll ever use, because it uses more of the brain than anything else, more than sitting still, more than screens. So it's vital. It's not just a nice little optional extra for a child, it's a fundamental of brain growth. And then when you look at the evolutionary biology of it, it's linked to life expectancy. It's a fundamental ability for young mammals to turn themselves into strong, healthy adult mammals. And it's in all mammals. We've been doing it for 200 million years. It's a vital component of life expectancy. And in my book about play, I talk about skipping, as being, 3 different aspects of life expectancy in one simple movement, and yet children just instinctively do it. So I think that that's what we've got to start doing if we want that message to really permeate. And there are people saying that we shouldn't be talking about play because it detracts from proper education. I think when you understand what play is really doing in terms of building the infrastructure in the brain for all that education that you want, I think that's when we've got to be loud and proud and just go, no, it's not a bit good. This is profound, life-changing for our children. I think that's probably the best.